fact, it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you have had 5 husbands, and the man you have now is not your husband. What you have said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped at this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming where you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." This is the word of the Lord for us this morning. Thanks be to God. The story begins with a small detail that's pretty easy to miss, but is pretty important. John writes that Jesus had to go through Samaria. And if I pull up a map right now, you would see that this makes geographical sense. Judah is south of Samaria, which is south of Galilee. And so the shortest route from Judah to Galilee is through Samaria. It makes geographical sense. It doesn't make cultural sense, though, because there's hostility between the Jews and the Samaritans. Most Jewish travelers went around Samaria, taking the long route, the east of the Jordan route, to avoid going through the Samaritan territory. And this hostility had been simmering for centuries. There's racial tension, theological disagreement. There's this mutual distrust of each other. Jews viewed Samaritans as compromised and unclean, and Samaritans viewed Jews as arrogant and exclusionary. So the norm was simple: let's just stay away from each other. But Jesus goes through Samaria, which means from the beginning of the story, we see something important about him. We see that he moves toward the places other people tend to avoid. Eventually, this journey brings him to a well outside the town called Sychar. And John tells us it's about noon when Jesus gets there, which is a time that in the sweltering heat of Samaria, nobody in their right mind would be thinking about drawing and hauling water to and from a well. Women usually came to the well early in the morning or in the evening when it was cooler and when they could come with a group of women. Nobody came at noon. Nobody except somebody who is trying to avoid everyone else. And that's what happens. A woman arrives at the well alone, which immediately hints that something in her life has pushed her into the margins. And so she comes to the well when no one else would be there. No stares, no questions, no reminders of her past. Just water and head back home. Except this day it's different. She sees a man sitting there, Jesus. And instead of ignoring her like a proper Jewish man would do, he starts the conversation. He says, "Will you give me a drink?" Which sounds unremarkable. But this is a Jewish man speaking to a Samaritan woman in public. He crosses culture and gender and moral barriers. And with one simple question, he does something profoundly humanizing. Before he addresses her past, before he speaks about her relationship, before he confronts the truth of her life, he dignifies her. He treats her like a person worth talking to. He looks her in the eye and he asks for help. Which means that before this woman ever hears a word of correction, she experiences something that she may not have felt in a very long time, which is respect. And I think this tells us something else really important about Jesus. That you see, when Jesus meets broken people, he doesn't do what we tend to do. He doesn't start with condemnation. When Jesus meets broken people, he begins with relationship. He begins with grace. Because Jesus doesn't avoid broken people, he moves toward them. And as the conversation continues, Jesus begins to shift the discussion. At first they're talking about ordinary things, water, buckets, wells. But then Jesus points to something deeper. He says, anyone who drinks this water is going to be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them, they will never thirst. In other words, Jesus is using the well in front of them as this metaphor, right? Physical water, it satisfies thirst, but only for a little bit. You drink, and a few hours later, you're thirsty again. You come back tomorrow, and then the cycle repeats. But Jesus says the life he offers, it's different. We're so busy trying to find ways to quench our thirst, aren't we? Whether it's from success or achievement or approval or pleasure or control, whatever else. But eventually we discover the same thing, that the well runs dry. The satisfaction fades and the emptiness creeps back in. And so we have to go back to the well over and over again. But Jesus tells this woman, and through her he tells us that there's a different kind of water. A deeper source of life. Again, Jesus leads with grace. Jesus leads with an invitation before she proved anything. Because Jesus knows something that this woman may not yet realize. The living water he offers is exactly what her thirsty soul needs. It's exactly what her thirsty soul has been searching for all along. And then comes the moment when the conversation gets personal. Jesus says, "Go, call your husband." And she says, "I don't have a husband." And Jesus says, "You're right. You've had 5, and now the man you're with is also not your husband." Jesus names her reality. But notice what he doesn't do. There's no shame in his voice. There's no dismissal. He doesn't walk away from her. He simply speaks truth in love. And this is the unique way of Jesus, the grace and truth together, not grace alone that ignores her sin, not truth alone that chastises her, grace and truth together. And instead of running away, she leans in. And as the conversation continues, something remarkable happens. After Jesus speaks about her life, the woman realizes she is not talking to an ordinary traveler. She says, "Sir, I can see that you are a prophet." And Jesus responds, and then she says, "I know that Messiah called Christ is coming. And when he comes, he'll explain everything to us." In other words, one day answers will come. One day God will set things straight. I know that. But Jesus responds in an extraordinary way. He says, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he. I am that Messiah. I am that Christ." In the Gospel of John, this is the first time Jesus openly reveals his identity to anyone. He could have told some religious leader in Jerusalem. He could have revealed himself to some respected teacher of the law. He could have chosen someone with some kind of spiritual credibility, but he doesn't. Instead, the first person who hears his direct revelation is a Samaritan, is a woman. Someone with a complicated relational history, someone who lives on the outside of her community. In the eyes of their society, this is the least likely candidate for such a moment, but in the eyes of Jesus, she's exactly the person he came to reach. Because Jesus doesn't reveal himself only to the polished. He reveals himself to the thirsty. And that tells us one more thing about him. It tells us that the people who often feel furthest from God are often the people Jesus moves closest to. The woman came to the well carrying the weight of her past, the loneliness of a complicated life. But when she meets Jesus, she discovers something she never expected. He already knew her story. And he's still sitting there. Because Jesus doesn't avoid brokenness. He meets it. Not with rejection or shame, but with the grace and truth and the life that only he can give. So my question for you all this morning: where is Jesus meeting you? Where might Jesus be meeting you in your own brokenness? That brokenness you prefer to keep hidden. For some, it's in some kind of hidden sin or relationship failure or some secret addiction or a deep shame from the past or a spiritual question you've been afraid to ask. And your instinct may be to hide it, to manage it, or to pretend everything is fine. But the message of the story is clear. Jesus already knows. And he's still sitting at the well. He's not waiting for you to fix yourself. He's not waiting for the Instagrammed version of you to become your reality. He's inviting you to bring your real self. Because transformation begins when we stop hiding. So how do we do this? First, you need to bring your honesty to Jesus in prayer. Confess what you've been hiding. Maybe it looks like inviting someone safe into your story. And lastly, it means you need to stop believing that your brokenness disqualifies you. Because it might be the place where Jesus meets you most deeply. Friends, the beautiful thing of the story is that it doesn't end at the well. Because the invitation that Jesus gives this woman there is the same invitation he gives to all of us. He offers living water, life, and grace, and forgiveness, a relationship with God that doesn't depend on us having it all together. And thank God. And that's exactly what we remember when we come to this table. Because the truth is, the only reason Jesus can offer living water is because of what he was on his way to do. The conversation at the well happens early in Jesus' ministry, but eventually that road leads somewhere. It leads there, where Jesus would take the full weight of human brokenness on himself, all of our sin and shame and failures and regrets and all the things we're trying to hide. Jesus didn't avoid them, he carried them. And at the cross, something remarkable happens. The one who promises living water says, I thirst. The one who came to satisfy our deepest spiritual thirst took on the dryness of sin and death for us so that we could receive life. And that's what communion is all about. This table is not a reward for people who have it all together. It's not a table for the polished. It's not a table for the people who managed to clean themselves up this week. This table's for the thirsty. It's a table for people who know that they need grace. It's a table for people who are still learning to bring their real selves to Jesus. Because when we take the bread and the cup, we are remembering that Jesus has already done everything necessary for us to be welcomed. And just like the woman at the well, we come not pretending to have no brokenness. We come trusting that Jesus meets us in it with grace and with truth. So this morning, if you are thirsty, if you feel aware of your need, if you feel like someone who has been trying to manage or hide parts of your story, this table is for you. Because Jesus still meets people there. Not with rejection, but with grace. So come. Come and receive the living water.